I was working at my job one day, and one of my coworkers, had been kind of relapsing. We were all concerned about him, and I sent some people over to his house to check on him, and he was dead, and he had been laying there dead for 2 days. So I sat there in his driveway, and I'm like, what can we do? And I just like literally just felt so defeated. And then I came up with this idea. I was like, what about an overdose detection device? Something that reads vital signs and so on. And that's where the idea started.
Substance use disorder touches all our lives, and often we feel hopeless or frustrated in our pursuit to understand how and why it happens.
Welcome to APC Recovery Cafe, where we discuss the topics and trends around substance use, provide education and resources, offer recovery support, and also discuss prevention tactics, all through the stories of the people who have been there.
We invite you to grab your favorite coffee or tea and join us for a variety of guests that will bring understanding, information, connection, and hope.
Together, we can break the stigma and pave a brighter future for each other.
Hello, folks. Welcome into this installment of APC Recovery Cafe. My name is Art Wimberly. I'm a person grateful to be in long-term recovery. And in the studio today, we have his co-host, Edward Taylor. Good morning, Edward.
Morning, Art.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, it's good to see you again.
You too.
Yeah.
You too.
Who's our guest today?
Our guest today is Kyle Berman, my friend and fellow person in recovery, long-term recovery. Morning, Kyle.
Morning, Ed.
Welcome,
Morning,
welcome.
Art.
So tell us a little bit more about how you guys met.
Kyle and I met at a recovery meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Several years ago, like
three or four years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even know where the time goes, to be honest. But I always kind of looked up to you. You know, you always had really good shares, and I would, sit and listen attentively, and I think our friendship has just kind of grown from that. I don't think we've ever really hung out outside of the meetings and things like that, but I always enjoyed talking to you.
So, Kyle, tell it. You have a special looking drink here.
Do we have to talk about the drink?
Yeah.
It's bought and paid for. You ordered it. You got to say what it was.
Yeah, I'd like to know. It looks like it's got a lot of stuff in it. So tell us about it.
That's a Starbucks caramel frappuccino.
Oh wow.
Yes. So that's my comfort drink. So that's the first drink that I had. I was a teenager at the time. That it was the first coffee drink that I had that I liked. And so it opened the gateway to, me and drinking.
Is that because there's not much coffee in it?
There's not much coffee. It's real sweet and sugary, and it tastes delicious. Yeah. That's the fact, is it tastes delicious. Yeah. I don't drink them on a regular basis, but you guys asked me, I was like, I think I'm going to go with my comfort drink that I'd like to have in the morning,
Yeah.
So.
Tell us about why you're willing to keep putting so much time, effort, energy, money into this idea, and what's your backstory that got you here? Because I know a lot of it has to do with loss, the mounting losses, the deaths that are occurring. But tell us a little bit of your story.
Well, as it pertains to what I'm going to call revive, and it's actually kind of a poetic story of why I came up with that name for it. So the first time I ever went to treatment, playing Call of Duty Nazi Zombies with my friend Brian, and whenever the zombies knock one of you down, the icon on the screen for the other player, it says revive. So you have to go and revive them, and then they get back up, and then you keep fighting the zombies and so on. My friend Brian has since died from an overdose, and that kind of brings me to why I'm working on this is. I'm really tired of my friends dying. I've lost 11 friends this year, and the year's not over. We still have a few months left, and these are close people, like people that I know very well. Now, if I was to take into account all the other people I hear about that are dying, that just, and we're just talking this year,
right?
My little sister died in February. It was an intentional overdose, but I feel like I don't know, man. I'll tell you one thing is that I was working at my job one day, and one of my coworkers, had been kind of relapsing, and we were all concerned about him. And I sent some people over to his house to check on him because we didn't, he didn't show up, nobody heard anything, and he was dead, and he had been laying there dead for 2 days. And he had his dogs there. He loved those dogs more than anything in this world. And, so I sat there just feeling so defeated because, and Edward, I'm sure can relate. Like, we do a lot in the recovery community to try to help people, to try to help them find this way of life so that, they don't end up dead, so that they end up having a good quality of life and another chance, and we do these things. And I just feel like my best efforts in the recovery community, from the various committees, service positions I hold, the people that I sponsor, all of the things that I do and try to help, just don't seem to be doing anything. And I know they are.
Yeah.
I know they are.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that we are dying at such an alarming rate. I've never thought I would see this or experience this, and it's, I understand that it feels like I'm in a war zone. I've never been in a war zone, so I don't know what it really feels like. But when my friends are dying left and right, and I'm finding my friends dead, I mean, I don't know what else I can relate that to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know what else I can relate that to. So I sat there in his driveway, and I'm like, what can we do? And I just like literally just felt so defeated. And then I came up with this idea. I was like, what about an overdose detection device? Something that reads vital signs and so on. And that's where the idea started, right? And then the research happened, and I'm online, and I'm looking, is there anything at all? Well, there's some universities working on some overdose detection devices. They have these patches and things that will automatically deliver Narcan. As a heroin addict, I could tell you that I would never wear that, because you have to think about, well, what is the mind of an addict? What does it look like? Well, it's rewired so that all natural instincts for self-preservation and everything are overridden by this desire to use. So if there's something that's a threat to that, that's we equate that to like death to some degree, right? Like there's no way I want anything to do with that, period. So their devices will automatically deliver Narcan. Well, it's not going to save anybody if people aren't going to wear it. That's the biggest thing, in my opinion. And I think a small percentage of people would. Small percentage, right? So the device that I'm working on, and I've done some other research, is basically using the technology that we already have to read heart rate, oxygen levels, things of this nature, and to look for sudden drops in these. After getting a certain trending heart rate and oxygen level from the individual, let's say in a treatment setting or sober living, you get their trending, right? Because it's important that we understand what their trending heart rate and oxygen levels are, so that when there's a drop, and whenever it goes below that threshold that would be indicative of an overdose, my device would essentially, I haven't decided, it would either vibrate very aggressively, or it would shock, like a very light shock, right? And so what the individual would do in that case is have to push a button to deactivate it if they're not overdosing, because let's say they just got a really good high, because that's a thing that can happen. You just got a really good high, the device thinks you're overdosing, but you're not. Now, if it was those other devices, it would have automatically shot them up with Narcan, right? But my device, it won't. It's not. So what it's going to do is it gives you that option. Now, if you don't deactivate it because you have, in fact, overdosed, it's going to send that signal to family, friends, and loved ones who are armed with Narcan, because, this is, I don't know anybody who doesn't carry Narcan in the recovery community, who has a loved one. And if they're not carrying it, they need to go get some.
When I think back to like the worst of the worst, when I was actively using, that point that you're surely familiar with, which in art too, where you don't want to anymore, but you can't stop, and so sure, like in my mind, it was I don't want to overdose. I've caused my family and loved ones enough pain, but I can't stop. But if there was this thing, and I was like, I'm doing a lot of dope, and I nod out hard, but I'm not overdosing. And we both know what happens when somebody's overdosed and they get Narcan. You go into immediate withdrawals. I'm not taking that chance, you know?
Right.
As absurd as that sounds, that's reality.
That's where your brain, that's where a brain is at that point.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say too, you know, I think even the devices that are, because somebody's gonna make the kind that delivers Narcan.
Yeah.
And I do think that's good, and I do think that could be a really helpful tool.
Agreed.
Maybe not necessarily to people who are in the throes and like as bad as what I was just describing, but it could be something where it's another tool. Like if you stay at this sober living, you have to wear this, you know, and you have to do Vivitrol and you have to do all this other stuff. Or it could be something where it's like an MAT program, and it's like one of our requirements is you have to wear this device.
Exactly.
I don't know if that jives with Suboxone. The point is, it's another tool, you know. But I do like this version of it. You know, I think that's more addict friendly, maybe, if that's the right way to say that.
I mean, and that's where it's coming from, right? I'm an addict.
Yeah.
Right. I'm a recovering addict. I understand how addicts think. So, in my mind, this is something that's not so invasive. It's not something that, you know, is gonna just, you know, deliver this, you know, this horrible kind of scenario.
Yep.
It holds a certain degrry of accountability, right? Too, like kind of what you were
real quick.
Oh, whoa, hey. But you know, I think that it has a lot of potential, and like you said, it's addict friendly. It's like something that I would be willing to wear. And I've kind of done just you know, random questions to people in recovery, and I'd ask people, you know, from different, you know, meetings and whatever. It's like, would you wear a device like this, or would you wear a device like this? And whenever I ask them, would you wear this system that would deliver Narcan, they're like, absolutely.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
shock on
No.
their, they were like shocked.
Yeah.
Like
Like,
absolutely.
I'm pissed that you even asked me.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And then I asked them about, what about something like this? And they're like, you know, and they thought about it, and then they're like, yeah, for my family, for, you know, because that's really, because ultimately there's going to be an app associated with it, right? And the family, the mother or the father or whatever can like look on there and see, oh, my kid's wearing their device.
Yeah.
That's all they know, is that the kid's wearing the device and that they're okay.
Yeah.
Well, that mother might be able to go to sleep that night and rest easy knowing that her kid is okay.
Yep.
And the only time it ever gives the GPS coordinate is upon an overdose, to protect, you know, both the addict and the mother. Like there's no reason, or parents, right, that they should know where they are at all times.
Yeah.
You know, it's not.
So it does. So in case there was an overdose, then the GPS would alert. Then and only then would you know where they are.
Exactly.
So someone, a loved one, if they were close enough, could get there and administer, or could call 911 and tell them exactly where the loved one is. Is that the idea? Or
yes and no.
Okay.
My thing is that I want to get this out there as quickly as possible. Now I understand that, you know, it might not be possible. When we talk about calling 911, there's a lot of politics, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of things that are going to have to be involved in it at that point for us to have to call 911 in order for that, because it's going to have to go through all kinds of approvals and things like that. You know, it can't just automatically do that. So ideally, in my mind, I want it to be where it gets to just the family, friends, and loved ones. And I understand that there is limitations in that. You know?
so not the device calling 911, but could the concerned person?
The concerned person would need to go there
Yeah.
and see the individual. Hopefully they have Narcan, and then seeing the person, they can call 911 at that point. That in my mind, that's what I would hope, because I want this out there as quick as possible, right? And this is not another 5 years. 5 years, that's another 500,000 people that are going to die, potentially, right? At the rate that we're going, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the problem. And this is where, you know, this whole invention is like, well, okay, this is a small part of a solution to a great problem. You know, and this problem is that, you know, heroin's a thing of the past. Heroin is not, you have to have poppy fields. You have to have, you have to grow the poppies. You have to have these giant fields. You have to process it, all this crazy stuff, and then, you're only going to get 1/50th of the, what you're going to get with the same amount of fentanyl, right? And that's the thing is like, fentanyl's 50 times more powerful than heroin. So that means it's 50 times more profitable than heroin. So for everyone who is in the drug business, selling drugs and, manufacturing, smuggling, that's the ideal, product because, it's 50 times more profitable than heroin. That's a lot. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
That's extremely
easier to manufacture, easier to hide, easier to. Yeah.
Exactly. Easier to hide, easier to get it across the border. Even if it killed 30 out of the 50 people that it got, that's still 20 times more profitable than heroin.
Yeah.
Like if we're really breaking that down, so that people wonder like, oh well, why would they make fentanyl if it's just killing all their users? Well, why? Because it's money, it's greed, that's why they don't care.
Yeah.
They just want the money.
So this is not a trend that's going to go away anytime soon.
It's going to get worse.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's going to get worse before it ever gets better. And that's why I feel like we need to do more on the front of mitigating this epidemic. Prevention, of course, absolutely, but the harm reduction side, we need to try to get a little more creative in finding ways to mitigate, because if we look at these numbers, I can't even... And again, like, I've never seen anything like it this past year. The amount of people that are dying. I went to a funeral, and then the next day, a friend died, and then another person I know died that same next day.
All right.
And it's been pretty much every week I hear about somebody. I hear about somebody dying, and that's why I have to really try to give this thing everything that I've got to try to make it happen. It's been done. There's people who there was doctors and some other people that did the research with the device. And I'm trying to figure out where that research is. That's what, I'm like, why?
It's probably not ready to be published yet. That might be.
Right. But in that might be the case. I hired a patent attorney through a company. The idea is still patentable. Based on what I'm trying to do. So, and that's important in this. And I'm just like, well, why do we not have anything yet? This needs to be on like the fast track to like getting, we're talking about, people's lives. This is very serious,
Yeah.
And, the effectiveness of it, I don't know. Again, like I said, I'm kind of in way over my head on it. It's above my pay grade.
Yeah. So do you think right now the biggest hurdle is technology or something else?
Well, for me, it's the connections. I need the right people to help put this together. We have the technology. We have it's here. It's already been done. They've already done this pretty successfully from what I've researched. They have all these different things. The technology is here. We just need to get it made.
We talked about how you and I met, which was at meetings. Nobody finds themselves in those rooms without a hell of a story behind it. Whatever you're comfortable with sharing, kind of give us a version of what led you to be sitting in that chair there where I met you for the first time.
For one, I was born an addict. I had that mentality of always wanting more, needing more. Never felt okay in my own skin, wanted to be accepted, wanted attention, thought, I had very grandiose thoughts, even from a child, and I think, it really started with substances when I was 16. So that's when I can pinpoint where things really changed, and my mother had introduced me to cocaine. And that's where I was like, oh, this is okay. And I had smoked weed and drank with my mom years prior to that. But this was, a distinct moment. Yeah, this was a distinct moment that, because that was, where I was like, oh, well, it's okay if I just manage well and do what I'm supposed to do. I can.
Because it went fine with drinking and pot.
Yeah.
And I'm not even being sarcastic. Like, I know what you're saying.
She had, and I was like, well, I just got to keep it together, because obviously, like, my mom believes in me enough, and this is where it's like, I'm making it about me. She believes in me enough that I'm gonna be okay doing cocaine and whatever else, because I've done so well with it, all the other stuff, and so it was a progressive thing, and it got worse as time went on. But I always wanted to be like that person, that was the life of the party. In my high school yearbook, they put most adventurous. That was my thing. I was the most adventurous, which I was like, that checks out. Yeah. Because I was always down for whatever. Yeah. And I was always kind of leading the charge on whatever kind of wild activities that teenagers do and get into. I experimented with LSD and stuff, and in my boarding school, mind you, I was in this boarding school, and that was quite the experience. And then, as time went on, I graduated high school, surprisingly, and I think that somewhere, in that year and a half, I was living with Brazilians in Orlando, Florida, some really good friends of mine. It was a great experience. And all we did was party. Like, that was kind of like the culture, was like in the Brazilians' culture there, we just partied and had a good time. And there was no real such thing as like alcoholics or addicts. That was like a concept that none of us, nobody ever, I never thought, and all of them seem fine today. Every one of them that I partied with, they are all great and doing well, and life is good, but they're
at the point where they have like one drink. They're like, whoo, that's enough today. And
so they outgrew it pretty quickly.
Yeah, they outgrew it, but it did not. I'll tell you one thing is that it did. It was just from there, it started to continue for me, and I just needed to do more. I think when I was 20 years old, my mother was in this apartment, and she was smoking crack with this guy, and this is where I was staying with her at the time, and I was like, well, I want to try that, and so she let me try it, and I think that she was a little apprehensive about it, and I don't. It's like, if you're doing it, I want to do it. That was kind of like the monkey see, monkey do kind of thing. It's my mom, and so obviously I can keep it together. I mean, like, I've heard bad things about crack, but like,
it's not so
it
bad.
Can't be so bad.
Crack.
Mom smoked crack. I can, whatever. So after that was when that was where, like, it changed. Like, that was it. Game on. So I smoked crack, and like, it's like, man, all I want to do is smoke more crack. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I got court ordered into a state-funded treatment facility because I was a danger to myself and others, and I do believe that, more so to myself for sure. So I went there and found my first glimmer of hope in this book. It has like a doctor's opinion talking about the allergy of the body and an obsession of the mind, and start talking about like addiction and alcoholism and all these things, and I was like, that's me. Oh, and then it goes on to say there's a solution, and then there's like, and these other things, and I'm like, wow, okay. And now I'm hearing things. I'm hearing things and seeing things from a different lens. I'm willing to do that because I've been beaten down so hard. I mean, I'm at the very end of the rope here. So. I got a mentor, whatever you want to call it, and I worked the 12 steps, relapsed after 6 months, and then I got, sober, continued to work the steps because they worked, right? But there was like little key components or things that I was not willing to do or let go of that were, hindering me from, getting to that place of, complete surrender and in that, we talked about earlier about like the ego-based sobriety versus like the humility-based sobriety, and that was a key factor, right? And a lot of it is, we talk about, like what is spirituality, what is whatever all that, and for me, like I talk about this, and so this is really important. I think I shared it last night at a meeting. You know, spirituality is the quality of the nature of my relationship with myself, God, and other people. And what am I doing to nurture those relationships? So to a large degree, recovery for me is all about relationships. It's about connection.
Yeah.
It's not and that's the thing. So if I allow myself to get disconnected in any one of those areas, I will start to get disconnected in all of them. And that's kind of, and then the everything kind of starts to get a little shaky. Then I have my morals, my values, and my beliefs, the things that I believe to be true. And then I have my behavior, right? And the further my behavior gets from my morals, my values, and my beliefs, the sicker I get, right? And so, like, then that's where if I'm compromising my values to get something that I want, well, I'm going to take a spiritual hit for that, right? And I can only take so many spiritual hits left unchecked before I relapse. That's what that looks like. So, you know, and now my threshold for pain is not so great. So when I experience a certain amount of pain, I'm like, okay, well, let's hit the book. Let's figure out what's going on. Talk to, this guy, that guy, call Edward or, whoever and talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, talk about it, pray about it, help someone else. You know, there's other words like trust God, clean house, help others. Like these kind of like.
It's kind of like the development of a conscience that's both accurate and merciful at the same time. We really are responding to the truth. The conscience becomes accurate, but we learn to be more merciful with ourselves. Is there something you think about as far as like, okay, what's the next thing here with Revive? How do we get that message out so that maybe the right people can connect and let's get this done?
This is another quote, and I don't know who says it, but it's like, we begin by changing the world one person at a time, right? And so that's what kind of helps keep me grounded. And that's why I keep doing the work in the recovery community, individual work, one-on-one or whatever, and like the various committees and service positions and things like that. Because at the end of the day, I'm not willing to sacrifice that stuff to work on this Revive. Because that's what got me to this position. So I'm not gonna, cut corners or like let go of sponsees or whatever, so that I can work on this invention. Because that to me is the most important thing first, right? And then of course Revive, and then whatever else, But
to put some more weight behind the Revive app and recovery support and prevention, there might be people who see this as a business opportunity, investors, and that's normal. It's how stuff works, like for good or bad, and I just say, I think the issues that we've been talking about and we've talked about on here before, it's unimaginable the pain that either somebody in active addiction who's lost the power of choice, or for their family members, and we're not even talking about people that pass away and overdose and die. It's there might be people out there like the 1 in 10 where they're like, oh, me? No, it's not. I'm definitely not one, and it's not in my bloodline, and it's not. We don't have junkie alcoholics in my bloodline. It's like, well, give it time. It will come up, and it'll touch you in some way. But like it's a societal issue at this point. Like and people they're just dying. Like you're just done. Like it's not, and it's not not a thing of what is it even? Some people call it junkie pride, not junkie pride, but just like there's nothing any more special about me as a recovering heroin addict from a recovering alcoholic or whatever. But here's the difference. I go out and I relapse. I don't know, a very good chance that I'm going to die. Somebody who's an alcoholic goes out and goes to a bar and has a drink. They might drive drunk and get in a crash, but otherwise, if they're just drinking at the bar, they're not going to die. Like, and yes, and they would eventually. The point is there's all that time where there's opportunities for them to have that awakening and that second chance, third chance, fourth chance, fifth chance. Heroin addicts, we don't have that. Opiate or anyone doesn't if they choose to use an opiate. So So it's absolutely an issue. Try not to think of it as completely just an investment opportunity. This is something that could make a huge difference, and it's like you said, it's in its infancy, so it's going to progress and it's going to change. But this is a fight that we're losing right now. So maybe this isn't, and probably isn't, no offense, it's not going to solve the issue, but it is a tool, and potentially a huge, very impactful tool. I'd say if you're wanting to support it, put your ego aside, put your whatever you think is be open-minded, and whatever kind of support it is, whether it's Revive, whether it's prevention, whether it's just anything. Just start thinking openly and honestly about this issue of addiction and how it's a disease, and how yes, it's a choice to use the first time, but for a lot of people after that, there is no choice.
Folks, thanks for joining us this time on the APC Recovery Cafe, and we'll be back with you soon. Thanks.
One of the things that APC is known for is being a connector, because we're stronger together.
Not only are we there for those who are suffering through substance use disorder, but we're there for family members, and we really take our job seriously.
We all have personal reason why we're in this field. We're changing people's lives one community at a time.